Welcome everybody to RETail REdux with Cory Zelnik. Today I have the great pleasure of spending time with my dear friend Carrie Bobb, one of the most renowned retail real estate professionals via bricks and mortar, via social media, just an all-time great. We have become fast friends, I guess, over a 3.5, 4 year period that began via social media and continues via social media, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I'm so happy to have. So I'm gonna start by using my cheat sheet, which is your bio, which I find to be the most underwhelmingly written bio of all time. It speaks to your greatness, but it doesn't have enough of your greatness. So I'm gonna play along with what's in front of me, and then I'm just gonna blow you up. Okay, so Carrie Bobb is a senior vice president at Foundry Commercial and the founder and president of Hello Jenny. She has completed over $2 billion in total consideration with retailers such as SoulCycle, Sinopolis, we missed a note. Sinopolis, Sephora, Blue Bottle Coffee, North Italia, International Smoke, Salt and Straw, Dry Bar, and many others. Not several others, but many others. She has represented landlords such as Kilroy Realty, Bosa Development, Asana Partners, Protea Properties. Carrie develops social media strategies for retail properties by aligning digital platforms with the leasing strategy. She received her MBA from the University of San Diego and is also a member of the Forbes Real Estate Council, where she writes articles about using digital platforms in CRE. So that's the written word. But what I know, and what most people know, is that you're amazing. You're an unbelievably accomplished retail real estate entrepreneur from back in your early days of brokerage, tenant representation, landlord representation, and I think we need to hire you a better writer. So save that for another day. Lastly, I always like to hit the personal. I know within the last year or so, you up and left San Diego with the family, and you and Matt, Charlie, Johnny, and Jack all live in Nashville now. And I see on Instagram and everywhere else that you guys are all happier than hell to be there, and I'm so happy for all of you guys. And just because I don't like to leave these little tidbits out, because I think it's so important in the real estate business and in other entrepreneurial business, you are a Division I volleyball player, and your athleticism and your approach and your discipline shows very, very, very much in how you approach your day-to-day business. And I think that's another compliment and an attribute that you have and that you share with everybody so wonderfully. So welcome, Carrie Bobb.
Oh my gosh, Cory. Thank you. I want to take you with me everywhere I go. First of all, I'm so excited to be here talking to you because I'm the biggest fan of yours. I'm so touched by your intro, but I am so pumped to be sitting here with you and your podcast. Like, who would have thought when we met you'd be doing a podcast? And the world needs it. I'm so happy to be here. I've learned so much from you, and you've been very quickly became a mentor of mine through just owning my own brokerage business and owning a social media company, that I'm really, really happy that the rest of the world gets to hear your wisdom as well.
And I appreciate that. And who'd have thunk, not this is about you, not about me, but who'd have thunk where we were about 4 years ago, where we were just friends via social media and through our digital army and what have you, to be at this place. And so I'm very happy for that, and I'm grateful to you for the things you've taught me from a social media perspective. But now we're done with me. I want to talk about you. Why don't we get your version of sort of who you are, what you are, and how you got to where you are today, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I started my retail brokerage in San Diego in 2003 and worked at CBRE for 16 years, had just a horrific experience, which some people have heard about through all of this, and ended up getting into some lobbying and some advocacy work in employment law, which I did not see myself doing. And in that after that year of doing some of the advocacy work, we could talk about that if you want, but I started my own brokerage company. And then when I started my own brokerage company, I felt like my competitive advantage at the time, which was about 2018, 2019, was social. I didn't see anybody in that space. I kind of had to reinvent myself and carve a new path. And so I doubled down on social. People thought I was crazy. I think people still think I'm crazy a little bit, but that's where I saw no one else really playing. And then when COVID hit, everything kind of took off with the social media company. And then in 2022, my husband and I last year decided to move our family from San Diego to Nashville. I always thought I'd be raising beach babies, which they were babies on the beach, and now they're like country kids. So we kind of feel like we get best of both worlds and love it. But that's kind of how the path led us here. And I'm picking up my brokerage again, which I wasn't sure if I was going to do. Can you hear me okay?
I'm like your video's coming through a little weird. I just wanted to ask her.
Okay. And so I'm picking up my brokerage business again here. Sold my company, sold Hello Jenny to Foundry Commercial, and have joined them as a senior vice president in Nashville, although I'm working the Southeast. And it's been really fun to work on some of these mixed use projects again. So,
I mean, that's fabulous. I mean, your whole career trajectory has been tremendous. There was a personal stumble in the middle there, and it was unfortunate, and that may be for another day's conversation. But to your credit, you took that to a whole other level with respect to things that you did in terms of getting laws passed and your fight for your rights and women's rights and all of those things are to be tremendously commended. Beyond the scope. And maybe we set up another podcast for another day and we just talk about that, because I think it's the most amazing, wonderful thing that you've ever done in terms of life and in terms of your thoughtfulness as it relates to yourself and to women in general. So you are a rock star beyond rock stars as it relates to that solely. And that's another day. Today, to follow along the career path, I think it's an amazing thing that you've done with respect to going from brokerage. Like you said, you transitioned. We all got hit, pretty much equally when COVID came, where we had to do certain types of pivoting. I mean, it got to the point where I think we were all talking on a regular basis, and we all started to say, let's stop saying the word pivot, because it became synonymous with our day-to-day existence. And you've done it to a great degree in terms of the retail leasing aspect of the world and combining that with the social media aspect of today's world. So why don't you give a little story behind Hello Jenny and how that comes together and how you tie that in with what we sort of all do from a bricks and mortar perspective and a marketing perspective.
Yeah, and when I think about just like any of the common threads through all these like twists and turns of all of our careers, I think it's just always reinventing yourself and adapting to some of the circumstances that affect you personally, and then some that are just out of your control, that it's just the market or things like that, and always being willing to adapt. And agility, I think, is really important in brokerage, that you can kind of read the room a little bit and lean into where you need to lean into. Hello Jenny started when I hired a social media company for my brokerage company. I had Carrie, Bobb & Co., and I was doing a good job on social myself, but my brokerage business was picking up. And so I hired a social media consultant or company to help me, and they did a great job. I learned a lot from her. But what I noticed was she didn't understand the commercial real estate nuances, right, of the specifics of the industry, and my engagement rate went down for my company. The images and everything were great, and the subject matter was fine, but the engagement rate went down. And so I took it back, and as soon as I started running it again, the engagement went up, and I was just kind of like, one more thing I have to manage. And then I found a lot of my clients asking about it. And so we thought, well, this was, at the time I didn't see anyone doing commercial social media, specializing in social media for commercial real estate.
And when you say clients, was that both landlord and tenant, or was it one or the other?
It was only landlord. So my 75% of my business is landlord work, mixed use ground up development. And so we were only talking to landlords, but I've got a really interesting story for you. We had an opportunity for a tenant, and I think this was one of a pivotal point in the Hello Jenny story of how we built it. So just really quickly, Asana Partners let us do a test drive on the Beacon in La Costa, where we said, hey, we think if you actually have commercial real estate people behind the wheel of your social handles, you can align your social strategy with your leasing strategy and hit brands that you're trying to put in your redevelopment, and everything just kind of ties together. Would you let us try being your social media company for 3 months? And if it doesn't work, we'll high five, call it a day. We're not, like, it was a very low pressure sales situation. And that was 3 years ago. We started working with Asana, and we're now working in properties in about 15 different states. So
That's amazing.
super thankful for Asana. About a year into it, we had an opportunity from a celebrity brand that was based in San Diego that had, it was a coffee company. And we were pitching to do their social for the retail brand. In that timeline, I had to drive to Phoenix from San Diego for a photo shoot for a property we were running in Scottsdale. So on the drive from San Diego to Phoenix, I was listening to The $1 Billion Loser on audio. Have you and I talked about this, Cory?
No, I don't think we had this conversation.
Have you read it? It's the story of WeWork.
Okay, no, I haven't, but I feel like being New York based, and since WeWork came out of New York, I feel like I know that whole story fairly well. But I did not.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you would read this, and you're like, "Oh, I've seen this."
Right.
But part of the way through the book, and it was a New York Times journalist that wrote the book because he was covering the story the whole time. But he would contrast Adam, the founder of WeWork, and Steve Jobs often throughout the book. And at one point, Adam had started, we work, we live, we grow, whatever. And the author says, when Steve Jobs goes to his executive team, he would say, bring me the top 10 things we need to focus on for the year. And they would all collectively come together, bring him the top 10, and he would pick the top 3 and say, we're only focusing on these 3 things. We will get too distracted with everything else, and then we won't even be good at these top 3 things. So I had like no cell service while I'm driving. I had to wait till I got into like Gila Bend or something, and I called my team in San Diego. I was like, we cannot do retailers. We have got to do landlords in commercial real estate. If we start doing brands and retailers and all this, we're just like every other social media company that also does some commercial real estate. Because there's a lot of those out there that do like all sorts of things, and then they'll also do like a random shopping center too. And I really didn't want to be that. I wanted to be solely focused on commercial real estate. And I think that was really, really attractive as we've grown, and now we're able to grow into like the different product types of multifamily and office and senior housing and all of that because of that one like moment, which I know sounds not that big of a deal, but it kind of was for us.
No, it is, because you can get, like you said, you can get spread too thin, and then what winds up happening is both get done at 50%, and that's not beneficial to anybody, and then you as the rep, you'd get hit over the head by the client, either one, if you're doing it, at a 50% rate, not literally, but somewhat like that.
Well, and then you kind of just become like everybody else. And I think in brokerage, how to correlate that with brokers, everyone says niche down, but you can pick a niche and it might not be the right niche. And how do you know when to niche down and then when to also do all these other things? And so like going back to like agility, kind of going down a path, and then once you see that no one else is there, you got to kind of test it, right? Because there might be a reason no one else is there, but then once you kind of see that there's momentum, to just solely focus on that one space was kind of the lesson I took away there. But timing is so important with all of that too. Sorry, I didn't mean to like
No, that's okay. It's perfectly great because I think it's important for everybody to understand your backstory, just a little bit. Every little detail adds up, and places you where you are today. Let's bring it forward a little bit, and let's just talk retail in general.
Yeah.
We all, we see certain things here in New York City. We've been ramping up. We have inherent problems, just being a city and office leasing and the problems that has caused on a day-to-day basis for retailers at the base of these buildings. But generally speaking, New York has really forged a nice comeback over the last year. But I think that when you look at data, I always think of you and data.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, over the last couple of years, up until this minute and continuing forward, retail on a national level, specifically bricks and mortar, have been unbelievably strong. What are you seeing out there?
I mean, bricks and mortar is still the dominant place where retail sales happen by a long shot. I want to say e-commerce, I don't have the exact stat, but it's like 17 or 19%. It's not the majority player by any means. But there's a lot, even though it's a small section, it's a big number. And what you and I were talking about earlier before jumping on this was that by 2025, it's anticipated that there'll be 1.3 trillion in social commerce, which means you're purchasing something through a social media app without ever leaving the app and like going to a website or a brick and mortar or things like that. And I think social commerce is significantly stronger in Asia, and it's just starting to kind of hit a trajectory and take off in the US. So the rate that social commerce is growing is exponential, but there's still so much opportunity with brick and mortar. And we saw it 10 years ago when online shopping, everyone thought it's the death of retail just with websites. And it certainly has made an impact in how consumers behave, but it hasn't killed brick and mortar retail. Yeah, things have changed, but it's not dead.
Well, we get like anything else, we get faced with what the media presents,
Mm-hmm.
and so that skews everybody. And for the people who just read the headline and not the body of the article, they don't get it, and everybody reacts to that or some report on the news and things like that. Because like you said, even today, where it has grown to, albeit a real number, but 15, 17%, there's still another 85% of business that's out there. And so a lot of it is brick. And when pre-pandemic, so many people didn't realize, and probably still don't realize today, was that the retail business, having nothing to do with internet sales or anything else, was heading down the crapper. The industry was having problems, and so many of these operators got to use COVID as an excuse. Oh, COVID. But had COVID never happened, those same companies would have gone bankrupt a year later,
Right.
if not sooner. And so retail as a whole had to have its own sort of redo. And I think what has happened is that social media and the internet have helped get the better retailers to figure it out. And there are still a fair amount of lingering retailers that have been around for a long time that have figured it out, and they're continuing to succeed. And then, of course, there's the startups. Social media has presented a tremendous opportunity for the startup universe, if you will. And some are going to succeed and some are going to fall. But social media and the internet and bricks have really come together in a very positive manner. And I think it's a wonderful thing for our industry.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's more different opportunities for entry into the retail space now than 10, 20 years ago working in retail. I mean, I remember when I started in the business, there was no online shopping. Right. And so like Ann Taylor was rolling out 200 stores a year. That has definitely changed. But instead, you're getting all of these little entrepreneurs who are seeing success. Not everybody does, but the good ones who are dipping their toes in this retail world through maybe starting on Etsy or even just through a social app, seeing if they can sell their product, they're actually gaining some traction. You kind of if they can catch a current with either a celebrity picking them up or just over time getting traction with consumers, those are becoming some of the more desirable brands, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun because I think what social media and just general access has done is it really lowered the barrier to entry, right? So
right.
Anybody can get in the game, like period. The end. Anybody can get in the game, but it's like the cool hot restaurant. In the end of the day, for longevity, your food's got to be good. And so if you create a product and some celebrity likes it for 26 minutes and it blows up for another 5 minutes, if it's not a good product, it's not sustainable, it's going to go away. But again, the important part of it is anybody in this world has a chance to give anything a shot. And it makes it fun.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. It also makes it hard because there's so much competition out there. But you're right. The ones that stay at it and are tenacious about it, it's fun. Their success stories are really fun. Everyone's kind of rooting for those people and those brands.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial spirit that runs through our industry is over and beyond, right? Everybody wants to find that one opening. Look, you found an opening 3-4 years ago. You found an opening and you jumped on it. Takes a lot of work. You got beat up a little bit, but you fought through it. But you had that gap. Now, there's not always an opening. You can't always find that. Sometimes you got to fight through a crowded field. But again, nothing stops you. There's nothing that stops you from the opportunity. It's all about how you handle it individually as an entrepreneur. And I think that's just a wonderful part of our day-to-day existence because, you and I go back a ways in the business and in the industry, me longer than you, but traditional, whatever that means anymore, is out the window, right? Whatever that means. We had.
Well, I wouldn't throw it all out.
What's that?
I wouldn't throw it all out.
Oh no, you're right because it just made me think of a conversation we had this morning. Our group was in the conference room. And we had a little breakfast because a lot of people run around, and I was able to wrangle everybody together. And we're sitting, we're sitting in the conference room, and there's jeans and there's sneakers and there's t-shirts and there's just comfort, perfectly fine and relaxed. And I said to the group, I said, when I first started in the business, if someone walked in and saw this, they would just figure we're meeting on a Saturday morning. But that whole part of tradition has gone out the window. But at its core, and it's a lot about what I talk about on a daily basis, is that you do need a fair amount of old school to play into this new school of social media. And
yeah. And I think one of the interesting things when we're talking about the brands and how people are rooting for certain brands to succeed, they're really rooting for the founders or the people behind those brands to succeed. And I think you've done such a great job, Cory, of doing the same thing for a brokerage company where people are seeing you and I know it's the Zelnik company, but it's just synonymous with you and who you are. And people see you walking up. I love watching your stories and seeing you going up and down New York and talking to the naked cowboy and all. But I love that. And then when I see your posts about either listings you have or transactions you've done, those are so much more interesting because of all the other stuff. It would be really hard to just see, we talk all the time about just listed or just sold or whatever,
right.
But those become more meaningful because of who you are and you showcasing all of that. And I think we need more of that in commercial real estate for sure. I have found myself getting more buttoned up in meetings with clients. I almost always have a blazer on now because I've kind of gone back the other way. And so to your point about having both old school and new school, I think we've lost some of the seriousness of our industry at times. But then I think there's a lot of space on social to be very personable and show your personal side. So it's a balance, and it's hard to do. And sometimes I feel like doing it more than others.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's funny you talk about wearing the jacket. You know, even now, it was almost like there was one day that somebody held up a sign and it said it's time to change, because I thought you saw it in the meeting. So I find myself now, I'm sitting here with a shirt, but I'm wearing a suit today. I don't know that I've put on a tie for a meeting in forever, but I know that, through COVID, after that period of nothingness where, you weren't doing anything, you were answering phone calls, and that was about it. And even as you transitioned into some active business, everybody was like pair of pants, sneakers, and a t-shirt, and then it was fine. And then slowly and steadily, it became pants with a pair of shoes. And then you added the shirt. Now all of a sudden it's with a jacket. And it's funny, I have a good friend of mine is Joseph Abood, the men's designer, and we would speak during the course of COVID in fun. And we'd always open up the call, and he'd say, "You wearing a suit yet?" And I say, "Not yet, but I'm wearing shoes today." But it's solely, it has gone back, not completely traditional. Again, who knows what traditional really means, but there is a mix and match. And what you find is you adapt and adjust. Again, part of that is the entrepreneurial spirit of the business that we're in, and you go with it. And that's why I love what I do. I think it's probably why you love what you do. I wouldn't put words in your mouth, and I would imagine so.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love that you never really know what you're going to get on any given day. Like, you don't know what character is going to walk into the room, and there's a wide cast of characters. That is really what I love about this business. Is it is just, it's unpredictable at times, and that's what makes it really fun.
No, absolutely. I always talk about some of the chains that I've been involved with and their overall growth. And when I explain to some of the younger brokers that have joined my company or that I speak with when I lecture, I always say to them, we did 200, drugstore deals, and no two were the same. No two were the same. Part of it is New York City. Part, it's not cookie cutters throughout Middle America. Where you just
Wait a second. We've got to back up a second. Because that's not something you hear. You did 200 drugstore deals in what amount of time?
Well, firstly, I wasn't going there, but since you bring it up, it was 250, and it was over a 9-year period.
That's incredible. Okay, so let's do this, because this is something I was just having this conversation with an executive at a large firm. So I'm in my mid-40s. And my comment, and we were talking about how people in my peer group are kind of leaving brokerage companies and doing one-off or boutique retail firms.
Okay. And
so they're kind of seeing this trend. And my comment was, well, the world is so much different than 10, 15 years ago. So the group that's just a little bit ahead of me, when they were in their 40s, they were doing 200 drugstore deals or big box deals, massive deals.
Right.
And New York might be a little bit different. New York is different than the average national retail broker. So I fully recognize that. That's just so impressive what you did. And I want to hear what your advice is and your thoughts on this. Because I think there's a lot of brokers out there today who are in their late 30s to late 40s who have grinded and thought we're going to get to this spot where we saw the people ahead of us, but then because the world's drastically changed so much, there aren't necessarily 200 drugstore deals happening or all these box deals. What do you see that kind of talent space doing differently, or what have you seen people either adapting their business, or how are you coaching your brokers on how to capture more of that space?
Well, you know, it's hard. It's hard to say, go get that guy because he's going to do 200 stores. You know, what you have to do is it's really, it starts with the grind. It always starts with the grind. And so what a younger broker has, if they're working with me, is the ability to understand what we did and that there is a reality to it. Now, I've had throughout my career, I've had the conversations with the company that wants to roll out, 50 stores in New York over the next 3 years. And I have respectfully and politely looked them in the eye and said, what do you say we do one? And then let's go from there, because they come into town, I say town, and think that they could just do this because they did it everywhere else. And the fact of the matter is, this is a different beast. I could tell you about tenants going all the way back to Blockbuster Video who said, I'm coming in and cookie cutter this and prototype that. And now, because of the stage that I'm at, in life and business, I politely say to them, take those two words out of your vocabulary. Back then I say, okay, we'll do the dance, blah, blah, blah. But I say, take those words out of your vocabulary, because we're not designed that way. Like you talked about, middle America, throughout the country, whatever, someone says, they get on the phone with Simon or Regency or, one of the big operators, and they say, look, I need 50 by 100. This is what I need to do. And then they say, great, I have 30 locations that fit, and they got 30 deals. When I had to do that here, and again, I had a wonderful partner that we did it together. We had a great team. If I needed to do 30 deals, I had to do 30 individual deals.
Right.
Okay? And if I tell you, if my objective was 100 by 100, because I needed 10,000 square feet, probably three times, there was any given box that was 100 by 100. Because New York City is left, right, sideways, up, down, small, wide, and everything. And with that, even though it was a chain, you needed an entrepreneurial spirit from the chain to understand that it's different. And so now I'm 17 years in with Panda Express. Okay, 17 years. Took 8 years to do the first lease. Not because we negotiated for 8 years or walked away. It was just about informing them about the market and what goes on, because one, they were great at what they did or do, Two, their CEOs are real estate people at their core and think that they can dictate. So part of my education about the marketplace was not just the rent values here and there, but it was understanding the mentality of the landlord. Mm-hmm. And so while they are a $1 billion company, it's hard to think that you can come in, pound your chest, say I'm a $1 billion company, and anyone in New York City would give a shit. And so I have to go through that all the time. But going more directly back to your question, I get to walk, my brokers, my salespeople through the experience and what it takes. And most importantly, what I express to them is about listening, understanding what the needs are, not just that 50 by 100 or 100 by 100. Understand what the important needs are and then work from there. I stress, be in the real estate business. Don't be a real estate salesperson, because then you're just a car dealer. Understand the client's needs and work backwards from there.
It's so good. It's really true, because sometimes what they tell you they need is different than what they actually need. Yep. And you have to kind of that's truly an art.
Yeah, and again, sometimes you got to walk them through it so they understand it completely and why, and that's part of the education. And then it takes you back to one of the core principles of our business, which is patience. It's going to take time. You got to work through the process, and you get there eventually. But we strayed way too far away from you. This is about you.
I have like 3 or 4 more questions for you too on all of that.
No,
I do.
what's that?
I said I really do. I think the whole thing is fascinating about how you're adapting. I mean, still some of the fundamentals. There was a manager at CB who used to always say, you have to dribble. You would love this. You have to dribble before you can shoot. You got to dribble before you can shoot. So like the young guys, when I was young, we'd want to go pitch this big business, and he'd be like, okay, you got to dribble before you can take a shot. Like, let's get the. And so I think the fundamentals have changed, while some of the other aspects of the fundamentals have stayed the same, while some of the other aspects of the business have changed. And so it's just interesting hearing you talk about that. And then, are you guys? You and I've talked offline a little bit about kind of broadening what you cover. Are you guys still doing that, or where?
Yes, we're still doing it. By the way, just as a side note, that your fundamental statement, that's in the tagline from the day I started the company in my first ad, and we still use it today. That the
What is?
That the fundamentals don't change. It's in my corporate tagline.
Oh, maybe it was in my subconscious or something. But it's true. I really think that's true.
Yeah.
And
no, absolutely.
Gloss over that because they think you can kind of get to a lot of people much easier today, but you've still got to do the basics.
Well, that's it. That's it. You do have access in so many different formats, but the reality is, for what we do, it's feel and touch. It's literally feel and touch. Okay, and it's great that you can send me a floor plan and we could lay it out on a CAD file, but until somebody comes, especially here in New York City, because things are very rarely 50 by 100. You got to come and feel it and touch it and see it and all of that stuff. But back to your
talk about your territory, how you've kind of started to broaden your territory a little bit. I'm curious about that.
Well, what we did was we broadened our area. Firstly, locally, I always like to say New York City, but we're now into Long Island, a little bit more Westchester, and even a little bit in New Jersey. I brought on, our friend Kyle and Sarah. I think we're almost coming up on a year, and we've gone.
Really? It feels like he's been there longer than that.
I know it feels like it's been longer, but it's like, oh my God, it's a year already. And so he's helped us get our name out there on a national level. Going back to some of the things that you and I did earlier with respect to social media, it allowed for us, through a lot of those clubhouse conversations that we did during COVID, I got to meet a lot of people throughout the country, so it's allowed me to have conversations with people, whether it's Eddie Gonzalez in Arizona, or Mike Mogerman in Florida, and Gabe Gonzalez down in Florida, and things like that. So it's allowed us to have, at a minimum, a national conversation. How it truly evolves, it's still a work in progress, but we're ramping up, and I'm pretty happy about it.
That's great. That's awesome. I'm so excited for you guys. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, and some of that comes with, going, again, I'm trying to circle this back to you because you keep throwing it to me, was about the national retail demand that's out there. And we're trying to grab our little piece of it. We're certainly not going down the road less traveled. Plenty of people have done it. But we're just trying to find our little place, because I think there's plenty of area. So we just want to find our little place.
For sure. And I think as less young people have gotten into the business, I think there's a lot more opportunity to grow wider in like a territory that you cover. I mean, I'm doing that here in Nashville. We pitched a project in Kentucky, and which is so fun for me, because this is like, I'm still learning all of this stuff and I'm loving it, and like just all the Southeast and some of these little pockets where towns are really kind of coming into their own at the moment, which is really, really fun. Okay, I have another question for you, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to like dominate with questions. I just have like so much I want to talk to you about.
Is this
the first podcast you've done since ICSC?
Is it the first one? Yeah, this is my first one.
Okay, so I didn't go to ICSC. So tell me about it. How was it?
I thought it was good, not overwhelmingly exciting or anything like that. But that's not really to sound as as negative as it might.
Yeah.
I heard 22,000, which is a good attendance, not a great attendance. 30, 35 is better, much better certainly. But then I heard about 22. I think there was a good positive vibe to it. A lot of talk about interest rates, a lot of talk about lack of new construction throughout the country. For New York, it's more about FaceTime with certain people. A lot of our stuff gets accomplished here. Glad I went. Happy to see some people. Saw some people I hadn't seen in a while, and quite frankly, more importantly, I met people that I had never known before in person. I got to see.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, Eddie Gonzalez, Mike Mogerman, guys I've mentioned. I had never met them in person before.
What? You hadn't met Eddie and Mike?
When the earliest I would have ever met them would have been last year's Vegas, and unfortunately I had to cancel last minute, so I didn't make it out. And there's really no reason for me to really see them in between.
Oh, that's so cool. Was that so? I mean, because you guys know each other so well when you see each other.
Oh, absolutely. Fun. Oh no, it was fabulous, and
I love that so much.
Edie everywhere. I don't even.
Oh yeah, Edie Weintraub.
I don't even know if Edie. I know what's her last name. I don't even know her last name.
Weintraub, but I think she would be very happy to know her, that you know her as Edie everywhere. I think that's really cool.
Are you kidding me? I walked in the hotel lobby. She was talking to some people, and I said, "Edie." She goes, "Oh my God!" It was like, and I never met her before, and it was so funny.
She knew who you were too. That's really cool. That's fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed that takeaway. I enjoyed that takeaway from the show as it relates to what happens with business. Sort of almost the same as always. We'll know 6 months from now what happened in Vegas and how it evolves to money. But it was a good show. It was a good show.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So as we work towards a little bit of a wrap up here, because I think we have certain time constraints, and I know that you and I could probably do this for 24 hours straight. I'm sensing, feeling, and living through your positivity as it relates to you personally, which I'm very happy about for you and all of your successes, number one. Number two, the happiness that you have with you and your family. And least of all, but important to our day-to-day existence, the retail business and retail and social are booming. And you're benefiting from that, I'm benefiting from that, and it's really just great. So give me your little wrap up and closure on this conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shuffling of the deck in some of these smaller markets that I had, when I was in San Diego, I played in like Ogden, Utah and Fort Collins. I love these markets that are just outside of the major metro areas. I mean, I love the San Diegos and Nashvilles of the world. So the little tertiary cities surrounding it are just like have a soft spot in my heart. I love these cities, and you're seeing them just really start to take off and come into their own. And I love it because retailers are now got their eye on these kind of markets. And so I'm just really bullish and excited about what's happening in retail. And then in social, I think there's so much open ocean, especially for people in commercial real estate, because our industry is so lagging behind that there's still so much opportunity for us in the social media space. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us in a lot of different lanes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And I look forward to us, we're always going to communicate because we're in the same industry and we've become great friends. I'm looking forward to one of these days. You crept into Kentucky, so maybe you'll find your way further east and we'll find.
Oh, I'm coming to New York. I got to go to New York. I want to get you some cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. We got to get you to the honky tonk, Corey.
Well,
I know you love country music.
Well, Jessica and I will come down and hang with you and Matt. We'll go.
So fun. I love it.
Whatever the local Gillies is down there, that's an urban cowboy reference for the youngsters. But
take it away. He should come.
Right. I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to, again, we're going to continue to talk because we're great friends, but I look forward to business one day for us to mutually benefit in that regard. I cannot possibly thank you for your time doing this with me. It's great. It's going to be a great show once they edit it and produce it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I want everybody who's watching this to follow Carrie Bobb on Instagram. Her handle is Carrie Bobb. You can see her there. You can see her under Hello Jenny. Is there anything else you need me to plug for you? Because I can't do enough for you.
I am so grateful, Cory. Thank you so much. And your lovely team that's all behind the scenes. And I know they do so much and they make it look so easy, and it's not. So thank you and your team.
You're very welcome. And Stephanie and Madeline are thanking you as well for your time. And once again, everybody, it's been a great pleasure spending about a half an hour, 45 minutes with my great friend Carrie Bobb here at RETail REdux, and she and I will talk again down the road. And I thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie. Carrie, you're the best.
So much. I've so loved it, Cory. Big fan.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.